Something extraordinary is unfolding tonight, and if you dismiss it as just another ordinary movement in the heavens, you may not recognize the moment your reality quietly begins transforming beneath your feet. There are rare occasions when the sky does far more than decorate the night with celestial motion. Sometimes it becomes the stage for a sequence so perfectly synchronized that life seems to divide itself into a before and an after. Tonight, on Tuesday, July 28th, that sequence begins the instant the moon enters Aquarius. Under normal circumstances, the moon changing signs every couple of days would never deserve this much attention. Lunar ingresses happen regularly, and most pass without creating dramatic headlines. Yet this one carries an entirely different weight because it is not functioning as an isolated event. Instead, it acts like the first spark dropped into an already prepared field, setting into motion a chain of astrological events that has been building quietly behind the scenes throughout the entire month. That single movement immediately begins accelerating toward the Aquarius full moon. Right behind it comes the Sun, joining Jupiter in what many astrologers are calling the luckiest day of the entire year. Before anyone has time to fully absorb that wave of opportunity, Venus and Mars collide in a tense confrontation that delivers sudden, undeniable messages into the lives of three particular zodiac signs. None of these developments stand alone. They belong to one continuous story, and tonight is the chapter where everything finally begins revealing its true direction. Perhaps you have already noticed something difficult to explain. Maybe the mental fog that has surrounded you for weeks has started thinning. Maybe conversations feel easier to understand, or perhaps the endless cycle of confusion and crossed signals finally seems to be losing its grip. If that sounds familiar, do not dismiss it as coincidence, because there is a very precise astrological reason that this shift is taking place at this exact moment. We will arrive there soon. But before that explanation makes sense, you need to recognize that tonight is not creating something new. It is unveiling something that has been growing in silence for far longer than most people realize. Nothing about this story began today. It did not suddenly appear this week, and it certainly did not emerge without preparation. Throughout the entire month of July, every major planetary movement has been contributing another layer to an enormous energetic structure. Each transit has quietly added pressure beneath the surface, almost like invisible tectonic plates moving toward the same point of release. Tonight marks the moment when that accumulated force finally reaches its breaking point. The tension that has been increasing since the beginning of the month no longer remains hidden beneath daily routines or ordinary distractions. By the time people wake on July 29th, many will wonder why conversations suddenly become emotionally charged, why long-buried feelings seem impossible to ignore, and why circumstances appear to rearrange themselves with surprising speed. Most will experience the intensity without understanding its origin. They will search for explanations inside individual situations, while remaining unaware that the larger cosmic design has been unfolding above them the entire time. You are different because you are seeing the pattern before it becomes impossible to ignore. Awareness changes everything. When you understand the architecture behind an experience, you stop reacting blindly and begin moving with intention instead of fear. July of the year 2026 has been unlike an ordinary month in almost every possible way. Since its earliest days, the outer planets have been assembling an exceptionally rare geometric formation that many experienced astrologers describe as something seen only once within an entire decade. Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, the three most influential transformational forces within our solar system, have been weaving themselves into harmonious relationships through trines and sextiles. These supportive alignments create an energetic network that allows movement with remarkably little resistance. Imagine an invisible pathway gradually being constructed between the life you currently inhabit and the one your soul has been preparing to enter. Day after day, Without demanding your attention, the universe has been laying each section of that pathway into place. Tonight, when the moon crosses the threshold into Aquarius, that pathway finally becomes available. But stepping onto it is anything but peaceful, because Pluto stands waiting at the entrance. This is where the story becomes deeply personal. Hidden beneath the headlines surrounding this lunar ingress is a detail that many people overlook, yet it changes the meaning of the entire event. At exactly 9:45 in the evening, the moment the moon enters Aquarius, it immediately begins moving toward a conjunction with Pluto. Pluto governs endings that make genuine beginnings possible. It rules death, rebirth, obsession, transformation, and the uncompromising exposure of truth. This is not the kind of planetary influence that gently encourages reflection before quietly disappearing. It reaches directly into the hidden places of the psyche and demands complete honesty. The moon represents your emotional landscape, your instinctive responses, your inner needs, and the unconscious habits shaping your daily decisions. When that emotional body encounters Pluto, inside the intellectually detached and intensely observant sign of Aquarius, something remarkable happens. Layers that once concealed reality begin dissolving. It becomes as though your inner world has been placed beneath an emotional X-ray, revealing structures that have remained invisible despite influencing every important choice you have made. Suddenly, the subtle power dynamics operating inside relationships become impossible to ignore. Silent agreements that were never spoken aloud begin revealing themselves with startling clarity. Deep subconscious patterns that have quietly directed your behavior for months, perhaps even years, rise into conscious awareness without asking your permission. This is the moment many people will find difficult, because once genuine truth enters awareness, there is no returning to comfortable illusion. What becomes visible under a Moon and Pluto conjunction refuses to hide itself again. It does not wait patiently outside the door, hoping to be acknowledged. It arrives with undeniable force, breaking through every emotional barrier you have carefully constructed to avoid confronting what has always been waiting beneath the surface. Memories, realizations, suppressed feelings, and hidden shadows all move toward the center of your awareness at once. Naturally, this process can feel unsettling. It may even seem as though the emotional ground beneath you has become unstable. Yet what feels like collapse is not true destruction. It is preparation. Pluto is not dismantling your life for punishment. Pluto is clearing away the psychological debris that has kept you trapped inside outdated karmic cycles. Every limiting belief, every wound you continue carrying, every identity formed around pain rather than possibility is being examined, because none of those old structures can accompany you into the future that has been waiting on the other side of this month. Before something greater can fully emerge, the version of yourself that remains unconsciously attached to yesterday must finally be released, and tonight begins that profound process. The most remarkable part of this entire sequence does not begin with what is being removed. It begins with what becomes possible after the removal is complete. Once the emotional weight has been lifted, once the old psychological structures have been dismantled, and the inner landscape has been cleared by the meeting between the Moon and Pluto in Aquarius, an entirely different current begins flowing through the sky. Within only a matter of hours, the atmosphere shifts from profound inner transformation to extraordinary outward expansion. On July 29th, at 8:15 in the morning, the Sun reaches an exact conjunction with Jupiter at 6 degrees and 24 minutes of Leo. This moment has captured the attention of astrologers for years, because it represents far more than a simple planetary meeting. In traditional astrology, when Jupiter moves so close to the Sun that it enters what is known as the heart of the Sun, a condition called cazimi, Jupiter is not weakened by the overwhelming solar fire. Quite the opposite. Its qualities become elevated, strengthened, and expressed at their highest possible capacity. Jupiter has always symbolized growth, opportunity, faith, prosperity, and the willingness to imagine a larger future than the one standing directly in front of you. The Sun represents the essence of who you are, your conscious identity, your vitality, and the force that drives every meaningful decision. When these two celestial powers unite inside Leo, the sign where the Sun naturally shines with its greatest strength and confidence, the energetic impact becomes almost impossible to overstate. This is not a subtle increase in fortunate circumstances. It is an unmistakable surge of creative life force that astrologers have anticipated long before this month even began. Yet there is an important truth that deserves your full attention, because many people misunderstand what they are witnessing. This alignment is not an invitation to wait passively for miracles while expecting destiny to arrive without participation. Jupiter has never rewarded inactivity. Instead, this transit expands whatever potential already exists within you and magnifies your willingness to act upon it. It fills you with an uncommon level of creative courage, authentic self-belief, personal authority, and the determination to occupy the space you have been afraid to claim. If there has been a quiet voice inside your mind insisting that you are not ready, that someone else is more qualified, or that your gifts are somehow insufficient, that voice begins losing its influence beneath this alignment. The hesitation that has repeatedly convinced you to remain invisible starts dissolving almost without effort. The fear of stepping forward no longer feels as convincing as it once did, because the Sun and Jupiter together create something similar to a cosmic lens, taking the most genuine expression of your identity and projecting it into the world with unmistakable clarity. Notice how extraordinary the timing truly is. While the Moon and Pluto are removing outdated emotional patterns beneath the surface, the Sun and Jupiter are simultaneously strengthening the most authentic version of your future self. These are not separate stories unfolding independently. They are two halves of the same transformation. One side of the sky is releasing what has expired, while the other side is empowering what is ready to emerge. It is as though the universe is clearing away an old foundation and constructing a stronger one within the same sacred moment. That is why this sequence reaches far beyond the definition of an ordinary transit. It represents the crossing from one personal timeline into another. Every event leading up to this point gathers its full significance only when the next chapter arrives. On July 29th at 10:30 in the morning, the full moon reaches Aquarius at 6 degrees and 29 minutes, bringing everything that has been quietly developing throughout the month into one unmistakable climax. Every full moon carries the symbolism of completion, revelation, and emotional culmination. It marks the point where hidden realities become visible and where situations can no longer remain suspended in uncertainty. This particular lunation, however, operates with unusual intensity because it is not standing alone. The full moon joins Pluto while directly opposing the Sun and Jupiter Casimir, all while remaining connected to the exceptionally rare geometric pattern formed by the outer planets throughout the month. The entire structure functions as one unified field rather than isolated transits occurring by coincidence. At its deepest level, this lunation awakens one of astrology's oldest and most meaningful polarities. It asks you to confront the relationship between your individual identity and the larger world around you. Leo speaks with unmistakable confidence, strengthened by Jupiter, declaring the desire to express personal creativity, individuality, leadership, and the right to be recognized exactly as you are. Across the sky, the Aquarius Moon, intensified through its connection with Pluto, introduces a more demanding question. It quietly asks whether the life you currently occupy genuinely reflects the person you are becoming. It invites you to examine the friendships, communities, organizations, social roles, and collective identities surrounding you. Are they still aligned with your evolution, or have they become structures you continue maintaining simply because they once felt familiar? For many people, the answer arrives with surprising certainty. It is not born from resentment, conflict, or emotional drama. Instead, it appears with a calm precision that feels almost clinical in its honesty. You begin recognizing every place where you have unconsciously reduced your own light simply to preserve acceptance. You identify relationships that no longer support your growth, responsibilities that quietly imprison your authentic expression, and identities that once protected you but have gradually transformed into invisible walls. This realization is the doorway through which your future begins entering your life. The new path does not become available because something external is suddenly added. It becomes available because you finally release everything that has continued tying you to an outdated version of yourself. The full moon creates the space where that release becomes unavoidable. It no longer merely suggests letting go. It insists upon it because whatever no longer resonates with your genuine direction cannot continue accompanying you into the next chapter. As those old attachments fall away, the empty space they leave behind is immediately filled with fresh possibility, allowing the future to arrive far more quickly than you expected. Now think back to something mentioned earlier. Perhaps you have noticed that your thoughts have gradually become clearer after weeks of uncertainty. Perhaps the confusion that once clouded every decision has started fading without any obvious explanation. This is not random. The reason reaches back to Mercury, the planet responsible for thinking, communication, understanding, and the way your mind organizes reality. For weeks, Mercury has been traveling retrograde through Cancer, quietly reshaping the way information, emotions, and memories have been processed beneath the surface, preparing your awareness for everything that this extraordinary sequence is about to reveal. If the past several weeks have felt like an endless exercise in frustration, there is a reason the experience seemed so relentless. Perhaps every important conversation stalled before reaching a conclusion. Perhaps emails disappeared, messages arrived too late to matter, technology refused to cooperate, or every attempt to explain yourself somehow created even greater confusion. Maybe the most unsettling part was not what happened around you, but what happened inside your own mind. There may have been moments when your thoughts felt unusually scattered, when concentration slipped away for no obvious reason, or when even simple decisions demanded far more effort than they normally would. None of that was random. Those experiences reflected Mercury moving through its retrograde cycle, expressing exactly the kinds of challenges for which it has long been known. Then, everything began changing on July 23rd, when Mercury finally stationed direct. Since that moment, something subtle yet unmistakable has gradually returned. Your thinking has started feeling more organized. The mental haze that lingered over every conversation has begun lifting. Ideas that once seemed tangled are slowly becoming easier to understand, and situations that felt impossible to interpret are finally revealing their underlying logic. This growing sense of clarity is not wishful thinking, nor is it simply your imagination searching for relief. It is the unmistakable sign that the mental congestion created throughout the retrograde is dissolving in real time. Understanding that shift becomes essential, because it explains why the events unfolding today carry such extraordinary force. Every discussion that seemed suspended without resolution, every delayed response, every unanswered message, and every decision that remained trapped in uncertainty during Mercury retrograde has continued accumulating pressure beneath the surface. Now Mercury is accelerating once again, moving forward while gradually clearing the territory left behind during its retrograde shadow. As that forward momentum strengthens, everything that has been waiting finally begins moving all at once. Communication that appeared lost has an opportunity to return. Decisions postponed for weeks suddenly become unavoidable. Conversations that seemed abandoned unexpectedly resume exactly where they left off. That is why the messages arriving around July 28th and July 29th carry such overwhelming emotional impact. They are not unexpected interruptions appearing from nowhere. They are the release of momentum that has been building quietly behind an invisible barrier for weeks. The pressure has finally become too great to contain, and now the entire current moves forward together. For 3 zodiac signs in particular, those long-delayed messages become the turning point that changes the direction of everything that follows. Taurus. What approaches your life now is impossible to overlook because it arrives where 2 of the most important foundations of your existence meet each other. The Aquarius. Full moon illuminates your 10th house, bringing attention toward career, public recognition, long-term achievement, and the legacy you are building in the world. At the very same time, the Sun and Jupiter Cazimi expands your 4th house, the place connected with home, family, emotional security, and your deepest roots. These 2 areas stand opposite one another within your chart, and both are activated simultaneously, creating a powerful dialogue between your public ambitions and your private foundation. You have likely been feeling this tension long before today arrived. Part of you has been striving to create something meaningful in your professional life, while another equally powerful part has been calling for greater fulfillment inside your home and family. Perhaps you've imagined living somewhere larger, creating a stronger sense of belonging, repairing old family wounds, or finally establishing genuine authority over your personal world. At the same time, professional expectations have continued demanding your attention, making it increasingly difficult to satisfy both sides equally. Around July 28th, a message arrives that connects these 2 seemingly separate realities. It may involve a professional development requiring an important family choice, a revelation involving property, or a financial change that encourages you to move beyond familiar limitations. Regardless of its exact form, the deeper purpose remains the same. You can no longer divide your personal life and your public responsibilities into separate compartments. The new direction opening before you asks for a different definition of stability. True security no longer depends upon remaining exactly where you have always been. Instead, it grows through the willingness to evolve while preserving what genuinely matters. The universe uses this message to make that truth unmistakably clear. Gemini, throughout this entire sequence you've been carrying extraordinary mental intensity, and your own body has likely been telling you that long before astrology explained why. Mars and Uranus are both moving through your sign, filling your nervous system with constant movement, heightened awareness, and a restless desire to express everything that has remained trapped inside. You've probably noticed the rapid flow of thoughts, the impatience to take action, the urge to speak honestly, and the growing difficulty of remaining silent. Yet despite that overwhelming internal energy, something has repeatedly prevented complete expression. Perhaps Mercury retrograde distorted your communication every time you attempted to explain yourself. Perhaps every opportunity seemed mistimed. Or perhaps deeply personal circumstances within your private life required silence, even while every instinct inside you wanted to speak openly. That period now reaches its conclusion. On July 29th, the square between Venus and Mars creates powerful friction between your 4th house of home and private emotional life, and your 1st house of identity. Something unresolved within your personal world, perhaps criticism, perhaps a lingering family matter, or perhaps a truth carefully examined behind closed doors, reaches the point where silence is no longer possible. Mercury is once again moving direct and steadily increasing its momentum, allowing words that once remained trapped inside to emerge with remarkable force. Yet the significance extends beyond simply expressing what has been hidden. The Aquarius full moon illuminates your 9th house, drawing attention toward higher knowledge, travel, broader perspectives, and expanded possibilities. Meanwhile, the Sun and Jupiter Cazimi energizes your 3rd house of communication. Together, these influences reveal that the message entering your life, or perhaps the message you finally choose to deliver, accomplishes far more than resolving misunderstanding. It opens the entrance to something considerably larger. It may connect with travel, publishing, broadcasting, education, or an idea that has struggled for weeks before finally finding its proper momentum. The future unfolding before you is one where your ability to communicate becomes perfectly aligned with the vision you have been carrying inside, and everything begins with the words that can no longer remain unspoken. Aquarius. This extraordinary sequence reaches its most personal expression through you, because the full moon is illuminating your first house, the realm governing identity, physical presence, and the deepest essence of who you are. At the same time, the moon forms its conjunction with Pluto directly within that same space, bringing the full force of emotional transformation into the very center of your personal experience. For Aquarius, this is the point where everything becomes intensely personal. There is no comfortable distance left between you and what these transits are asking of you. There is no opportunity to observe this transformation as though it belongs to someone else, and there is no intellectual explanation capable of protecting you from experiencing it directly. Within this extraordinary sequence of planetary movements, you stand at the very center of the unfolding story. Every zodiac sign is touched by these alignments in its own way, yet your archetype becomes the living expression through which this entire pattern is revealed. While the full moon and Pluto reshape your first house, the Sun and Jupiter Cazimi in Leo simultaneously activates your seventh house of committed partnerships. This means that the expansion, opportunity, confidence, abundance, and creative momentum promised by Jupiter do not arrive through isolation. They approach through another person. A committed partner may speak words that permanently alter your future. An unexpected proposal could appear when you least anticipate it. A remarkable collaboration may suddenly present itself. A contract capable of redirecting the course of your life could arrive without warning. Whatever form this opportunity takes, it enters your world through the doorway of relationship rather than individual effort. Yet hidden inside that extraordinary gift is an equally profound challenge. Because while the outer world extends a hand toward your future, the conjunction between the moon and Pluto within your first house refuses to allow your former identity to accompany you into that future unchanged. The opportunity itself is not the difficult part. The real transformation comes from what accepting that opportunity requires you to become. The familiar emotional distance that once protected you can no longer remain your permanent refuge. The carefully maintained detachment that allowed you to stay safe begins losing its purpose. The intellectual defenses that helped you avoid vulnerability gradually dissolve beneath Pluto's relentless influence. Layer after layer of emotional armor is removed until the authentic person beneath finally becomes visible. Around July 28th, the message arriving in your life has the power to leave you genuinely astonished. Its impact is not rooted in fear or misfortune. On the contrary, it may become one of the most meaningful opportunities or declarations you have ever received. What makes it so overwhelming is that it asks something completely new of you. It invites you to become someone capable of embracing intimacy without surrendering independence. It asks you to discover a version of yourself that no longer mistakes emotional distance for freedom, nor believes isolation is the only path toward preserving individuality. Instead, it reveals that authentic connection and personal sovereignty are capable of existing together. This is the new direction opening before you, Aquarius. It does not resemble a quiet doorway gently inviting you forward. It arrives with Pluto dismantling every internal wall you have spent years constructing. And almost immediately afterward, Jupiter places the blueprint for a far greater future directly into your hands. As this extraordinary sequence reaches its conclusion, it becomes clear that what is unfolding between tonight and July 29th cannot be understood as one isolated transit. Every planetary movement belongs to a single interconnected convergence. The conjunction between the Moon and Pluto continues uncovering the deepest emotional foundations of your inner world. The Sun and Jupiter Cazimi fills your identity with extraordinary confidence, creativity, and authentic life force. The Aquarius full moon illuminates precisely those areas of your life where evolution has become unavoidable. The square between Venus and Mars introduces sudden communications and undeniable circumstances that demand immediate decisions instead of endless hesitation. Beneath all of these visible events, the exceptionally rare geometric relationship among the outer planets continues supporting the entire process, ensuring that whatever dissolves during this period creates space for something more resilient, more authentic, and more closely aligned with your true direction than anything that existed before. At the same time, the North Node has shifted into Aquarius, guiding the collective evolutionary path toward innovation, decentralization, and future-oriented systems. Opposite it, the South Node in Leo steadily releases outdated patterns rooted in ego-driven performance rather than genuine transformation. Saturn has also stationed retrograde, reminding every one of us that any future worth building must rest upon responsibility, discipline, tested structures, and genuine accountability instead of fantasy or wishful thinking. Seen together, these influences are not signs of disorder. They reveal careful design. Every planetary station, every aspect, and every alignment has unfolded in deliberate sequence, preparing this exact moment long before it arrived. The pressure experienced throughout the month was never meaningless. It was the necessary preparation for what begins tonight. When the moon enters Aquarius, preparation gives way to transformation, and the next chapter officially begins. Before that ingress takes place, pause long enough to examine yourself with complete honesty. Ask what truth you have continued avoiding, despite knowing it deserves your attention. Consider which conversation has remained unspoken because fear appeared more comfortable than honesty. Reflect upon whether a relationship, a habit, or even an identity has quietly limited your growth while you convinced yourself that everything remained acceptable. Pluto has little interest in preserving what no longer serves your evolution. Whether you welcome the process or resist it, whatever has remained hidden will move toward the surface. Those who navigate this transit with the greatest wisdom will not necessarily be the strongest or the most fearless. They will simply be the individuals who've already begun releasing what they know no longer belongs in their lives. Throughout the next 48 hours, remain attentive to every message, every conversation, every unexpected encounter, and every realization that appears within your awareness. Nothing unfolding during this period should be dismissed as meaningless coincidence. The universe is not communicating through quiet hints during this week. Its message arrives with unmistakable clarity. Those willing to trust the unfolding process, even when familiar structures begin falling away, are the ones who step confidently into an entirely different future. The reality many people resist acknowledging is remarkably simple. The version of life you have known until now has reached its natural conclusion, and that conclusion arrives today. The transformation is no longer approaching because it has already begun. The only remaining choice concerns the way you will meet it. Will you welcome this new chapter with awareness, courage, and openness, allowing yourself to become the person you have always been capable of becoming? Or will you continue holding tightly to what feels familiar while the future quietly moves beyond your reach? This energy does not pause, and destiny does not postpone its invitations. Thank you for spending this time exploring these extraordinary astrological movements together. If this message has brought you clarity or inspiration, and you would like to continue following future insights, please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support truly makes this work possible. I would also love to hear about your own experiences, reflections, or observations in the comments below. Until we meet again, take good care of yourself and stay connected for more journeys through the wisdom written across the stars.